Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm Dear Darling. I shall we see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhallow today, as we'll be playing Animal Crossing as per usual. Monday morning, time to get snoring. Bank holiday here in the UK, actually, which is always nice. You might be like, "What's a bank holiday?" If you're not in the UK, it's I don't really know why it's called a bank holiday, to be honest, but it's basically just a public holiday with no celebration necessarily tied to it, except for that it's just a public holiday. Yes, but I guess we'll be continuing on our conversation of things that we did on the weekend celebration. So, good evening, everyone. And now in Fawnhallow, it's 11:38 p.m. on Monday, May 27th, 2024. I suppose there's a little, of course, Monday, meaning that we have a little bit of D&D conversation. Group 2 today, where basically they got to the end of a dungeon. The end of the entire experience, which was basically a mix of a puzzle or a combat encounter, depending on how they approached it, and then basically like a lot of lore to hopefully at least get some sort of questions turning on my head, like maybe like drop some seeds of investigation. If they don't follow it, that's fine. Like, I mean, interface of what you're, I suppose, interested in at the end of the day, but at least I'm giving it as an option, so you know. It won't be like later on, whoa, Scorpion, hello. It won't come on later down the line where it's just like, oh, you know, how is this like not foretold? I'll be like, you had the information. Not really, it's not going to be like that. I'm obviously joking, and I don't have that. I don't have an adversarial relationship with my players because I don't think you should. And I mean, D&D is meant to be a collaborative storytelling game, isn't it? At the end of the day, I mean, you can have adversarial, I suppose, if that's what you've agreed upon, but that's not what we've done. But it's just basically meant to be a refreshing palette because everything else has been sort of like drag forward, here's what's going on. This is very much sort of background, lore, puzzles, etc, etc. And now it's come to the end of that and we'll be wrapping up, reprogressing, I suppose, with a mainline plot, I suppose, in next session. Which I have ideas of how I think it's going to go, but it might not necessarily be how it goes again. It was nice to have this sort of like individually contained, it's not really individually contained, I suppose, but like a plot line contained within one thing, you know, where it didn't have to have necessarily associations with the other plot line. Well, it does have some associations, I suppose, in a certain sense, but not to a large degree. But I don't know. Is there anything really else to say about the design of a dungeon? Probably not. The final room was basically just like a tribute room to the deities, the pantheon and that sort of thing, and it basically gave a sort of introduction, not really an introduction to each of them, but it basically gave like a visual descriptor of all of them, so now they know what the deities look like, and gives them sort of like branching off points if they ever want to, like if it ever comes up in future, if they ever want to explore that avenue, they now have like a starting point of some kind. That's at least my intention for it. Whether that will come to pass is, I don't know. But yes, basically the final encounter had a thing where it's just basically like they could fight what was a stone, no, was it a stone defender? I can't remember. It was a reskinned, like, one sort of golem-esque creature of CR4 difficulty, which really started off with a bang by landing a critical hit on one of the players. So that was a lot. But yeah, it was basically that, but it was a golem which is not actively going to try and seek him out and defend him. It was just basically defending this place, and there was like throughout the entire dungeon there was like this ongoing lore and story about basically a mason in like ancient times who built this, and like his relationship with like another friend of his who this mason was like really super committed to his work, and then like his friend like gave him a present, but the mason was like, I don't know what to do with this. So basically he was like, I don't know, I'll just keep hold of it now. Then he continues making like his tribute to the pantheon, and then eventually his friend passes away before he could finish the pantheon, and he sort of like seals himself inside of it to be like, okay, this will, if anyone comes in here, they're probably like worthy enough, I suppose, for it to get it. And it was interesting, I suppose, in a sense, because there was a puzzle. The puzzle for the final room was basically one which was ongoing, which was introduced right at the beginning of a dungeon, where, spoiler, I suppose, there was basically a melody which they could hear faintly playing in the first room of a dungeon. And then it basically never appeared again until the end, where they could hear the melody once again. And basically, there was a descriptors of a thing of a raised pedestal sitting in front of a stone golem. And I basically just, like, described it many times as looking like a stage of some kind. There's like a spotlight shining down on it. It was raised. that sort of thing. I had descriptors of a gods, like mostly sort of like in a like circular pattern around it to be like, hey, this is like an audience. Basically, I tried to sort of hint and be like, there's some sort of stage, you need to do something on this, and the answer was perform a melody somehow. And then that basically unlocked things, and we got some cool magical items because of it, I think. Well, one of them got like a much more tailored magical item, because someone has to get the tailored magical item first. We can't have them all just like well, I mean, I guess you could have them all at the same time, but I think that feels like a bit ham-fisted narratively, doesn't it? So, you know, I suppose if you're my players watching, everyone gets their own, everyone will get more tailored magical items to them with time. This was just the first one, and actually both groups have got one, but the other group has not. It's complicated. They've got like the blueprint for one, but they don't have the item yet. If that makes sense. But yes, I mean, I wasn't going to talk about the dungeon the entire time. I guess wow, another scorpion. Why are there so many scorpions about the place? Oh, okay, never mind. Sorry, what scorpion? I was making things up. The scorpion never existed. But no, what I was going to talk about, we can talk about the dungeon design tomorrow, to be perfectly honest, but I was going to talk about what we did on the weekend. The weekend was we went to go see a comedy show, which is not something that we've not done too many times. We've gone to London to watch a comedy show a few times. There's, if you're in London, you'll probably know there's like a reasonably popular comedy club where sometimes famous comedians come and go, but a lot of like ongoing like startup comedians go there to try and entertain the crowd. We've been there twice, I think 3 times, twice as a group. I'm not like super a comedy-esque person. Like comedy is not really my flavour of choice for genre. I don't really know what my flavour of choice is for genre, to be honest. Slice of life, I guess. Drama, maybe, but those sort of things. I don't know. I guess romance is kind of more of like a recent one, but that's not really a genre I've interacted with much. It was just this recent anime, which I was like, whoa, you know, actually this can be like kind of crazy. Kind of love it. But I suppose. But yeah, comedy is not really always my sort of flavour of media genre to consume. But I enjoy the time I spend at the comedy club. I guess it probably comes to no surprise that I'm not like someone who like busts out laughing at like the joke. I'm not that like, I don't have like that sort of peppy disposition, some might say, which, you know, I don't see that as necessarily a bad thing. People are different after all. But you know, my friends like to laugh, and I mean, I like funny things all the same. So we've seen a few comedy things. I can't really remember who the comedians we've seen at that comedy club were. They were like startup comedians. There's one of them who was like on Britain's Got Talent, I think, who got like somewhat far. I don't know necessarily how far he got, and I was like, he was definitely the best one we watched at the club. And I think it's cool that in like the comedy circuit that people, you know, who are getting their sort of startup into the stand-up scene have a place to, you know, begin. People sort of go in with that expectation. They understand that it's like, okay, you know, we're going in with this idea that people are just trying things out. Comedians are trying to like find their footing, etc., etc. I think it's kind of cool, to be perfectly honest. But this was a bit different because we went to the O2 Arena, which, if you don't know, is basically a big stadium arena full of like entertainment events in London. It's not one I've been to that often. I'm not even sure when the last time I've been to the O2 Arena absolutely is, to be honest, but unsurprisingly, it's a weekend, O2 Arena, it was packed. But we were basically watching a comedy special by someone called Ramesh. Oh my gosh, another scorpion. There's 3 scorpions today. Ramesh Ranganathan? Is that his surname? I forget. Ramesh, comedian. Ranganathan, yeah. Who is a UK British comedian. He's on apparently on a lot of British panel shows. I don't really watch panel shows. The only thing I've seen which he's on is Taskmaster. He was on like the first or second season or something, and he was very entertaining. I think he has this sort of like false outrage like humor sort of aspect to him. He's very passionate about it, which I think was fun to watch. But he's in like a lot of other things. He's like the new host of A Weakest Link now that Anne Robinson is no longer the host. And yeah, it was like I've never seen any of his comedy stand-up specials before, to be perfectly honest. And it was just like, okay, let's see what it's like. Why not? So we sat down, and then, you know, initially we came like reasonably early. We came like around the time the gates sort of, not too long after the gates really opened, and we sat down, and it was like somewhat empty, that sort of thing. We got some water here and there. And we were like sort of anticipating, waiting for the show to begin. There was a DJ sort of hyping everything up, and I was just like, okay, it was kind of cool. And then of course he went on stage, and then he did his comedy bit. And what I didn't realize is that it's apparently he's recording his Netflix special called Hustle, which is coming out. So I don't know. There's the tiniest possibility that I am in that recording. Probably you can't see me in it. I'm going to be honest. We were in very far away seats. And I don't, you know, we weren't in like front row or something, but maybe in like wide camera crowd shots. I might be in there, maybe. Am I going to watch a comedy special? I guess I don't really need to. I've seen it live, if anything. But the weird thing about the comedy shows is I very much remember the feelings, I suppose, of watching it as like entertainment, that sort of thing. But it's very difficult for me to remember the actual comedy bits he said. To be perfectly honest. And it's the worst part is, even if I do remember, I suppose, the general topics of what he spoke about, it's not something I can really repeat, because a lot of it is about the delivery, I suppose, of the bits, and the sort of like the presentation, the lead up to it, the build up, and I don't have that sort of stage charisma to, you know, exert a comedic force or personality. Like, I'm gonna be honest, like stand-up comedy would be probably, I like to think I'm a quick learner. I'd give everything. If you were like, hey, do your best at doing this thing, I would give my absolute 100% best at trying to do something. I would fully admit, I believe I would be straight up terrible at stand-up comedy. I think I'd be okay if I could prepare my bits and that sort of thing. Actually, I think weirdly enough, maybe I'd be better at improv comedy than stand-up comedy. I don't think I have a sort of like chutzpah to be able to portray it in a very sort of comedic fashion. Like the sort of storytelling vibe. I feel like the way I tell stories will be similar to like the way, you know, like a kindergarten teacher or nursery teacher would tell a story to like a group of children. But perhaps a more flowery language, if anything. Which is just sort of my vibe, you know. I fully own that vibe, to be perfectly honest. I just find it, you know, kind of amusing. I don't think I've got that stand-up sort of comedy host vibe, to be perfectly honest. But in a more casual setting of improv comedy, maybe. I don't know. I'm not saying that I'm particularly good at improv, so really I think I'd flounder in both scenarios, but I don't know, something about stand-up somehow feels worse, despite the fact that it can be more planned. Because I'm sure a lot of the stand-up stories are made up, like, or, you know, probably you don't become a comedian without making like a very without leading a very interesting life. I think a big part is like I won't have like interesting stories to say, like comedy things. I guess probably what happens is like something mildly interesting happens in a comedian's life, and then they like spin it in a way which makes it sound more entertaining, or they like exaggerate, lie, misconstrue things, because it's all for favour a bit. Like, it doesn't, like, people aren't like looking at comedians being like, whoa, these are the true sayers of our generation or anything like that. People look at comedians and be like, I want to be entertained, I want to have a funny bit, I want to laugh out loud, etc, 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 which I think is perfectly fair. I think that's kind of like what both parties sign up for, right? So I do think I would be particularly bad at stand-up comedy. I think like maybe I'd be okay if like the crowd was like eating up my bits or something, and they like started laughing. But like if you start like bombing on the stage, I'd just be like, I don't know what to do. I don't know, how do I win a crowd back? Who knows? But unsurprisingly, Ramesh is a professional, and he had like the crowd in laughing fits basically the entire time. And there was a lot of people there in that stadium. Like, the stadium was basically completely packed. I don't know if I saw any empty seats. Well, okay, there were empty seats, but there were, like, I didn't see many empty seats. But people were like having a grand old time, like laughing at the entire thing. Like, I was laughing as well. I'm not even like someone who laughs all that much, to be perfectly honest, but I liked quite liked some of the bits as well. Like, one of the bits, I'm going to actually butcher it, so I won't even try and present it. I'm going to present it factually. But it was a bit about like how his mother basically gave him like 8 sandwiches or something for break time, and then like he just basically riffed off that for a bit, and you know, I found that very funny. I can't even remember what led up to this bit, but then he just basically had like these, as comedians do, they have like these throw away sort of like one-off like bit lines which they don't expand on any further because there's nowhere else to take a joke, but they're just funny in its own right. And I can't remember the concept, but the concept was something about like hiring people like through an app or something to like beat someone up or something, you know, like calling upon like mobsters, I suppose, or a mafia. And he's like, oh, what am I going to do? Am I going to go on Uber Beats or Murderoo or something? I don't know why. That cracked me up in general. I gave it no pizzazz, that delivery, and I gave you no context behind it. But for some reason, I adored that. Well, not adored that line. I just found that was like the funniest thing I found throughout that comedy special. I'm trying to remember what else he spoke about, to be perfectly honest. I don't remember the bits he did, but like the bits he did, which I'm about to talk about, I didn't actually find that funny. Or, okay, I found it like mildly amusing, just sort of like enough to go, which is basically the extent, probably of other people's equivalents of like a hearty chuckle. But he did a bit where basically he would say something and it was obviously divisive, I suppose, in a sense, or obviously like a real hot take, and then like he would just like tap the microphone and be like, hey guys. Just basically, if you don't get it, being like, is this thing on? Why is no one like laughing or cheering or whooping or anything like that? Yeah, there wasn't like too much crowd work in this one. I guess it's kind of hard to do crowd work with like 15,000 people, because the comedy specials I've been to, comedy shows I've been to before, and the smaller comedy club had a lot of crowd work because, well, it's a smaller venue, I suppose, to be perfectly honest. And that was kind of interesting. I don't know what I'd do if I'd be picked on in the crowd. I feel like I'd be very boring to talk to. Like I don't know what you'd have to riff off, because not because I don't necessarily leave an interesting life. I think it's part I leave a very, not normal life necessarily, but I don't take many risks in that sense, so I don't have crazy stories or anything like that. But I'm also like, I probably wouldn't divulge much information, I suppose, during like a comedy club thing. We'd be like, what do you do for work? And I'd be like, I do XYZ. Like, I mean, look how much I divulge on Animal Crossing, despite the fact I have all these random anecdotes. They're all rather mundane anecdotes if you really dissect them. I mean, if you break it down, what is this anecdote? It's, I went to the O2 Arena and watched the comedian. That's it. But I'm still going out for a spin with it, just to, I don't know, elongate it for not really much of a particular reason, just for funsies, ? But yeah, I don't know, Ramesh, he's a very entertaining comedian. I liked his bits. Not sponsored, but I don't know, go watch Hustle when it comes out on Netflix, and maybe you'll see the stuff as well. Just trying to remember anything else like amusing that happened about it. It was a huge amount of people, so it was very difficult to get back home. You had to go back by train, then you had to sort of like beat the crowds. So basically, as soon as he was like doing his thank you, just like turn to my friend and be like, should we go? And it was like, yeah, we should go. And I just mean like out the stairs, downwards. What's crazy is some people started leaving like way early. Some people started leaving like 10 minutes before like the end. And I was like, you're gonna like sacrifice listening to the whole other bit just to make sure you can get on that first train back home? I'm like, damn, that's crazy. I don't know. At least it kind of makes sense, like leaving during like the thank yous or anything like that. But I suppose your mileage may vary, because we got quite lucky where basically we managed to get into the train station and they closed the train station doors behind us to be like, there's too many people in here. Let's wait for the crowd to die out and thin out first, and then we'll let people back in. So we were like one of the last group of people in, which is lucky, I suppose. Credit to my friend who I suppose is much more well-versed, I suppose, in navigating these sort of situations than I necessarily am. He's just be like, okay, you know, we take shortcuts like this, we go like this, we go like this, we'll beat the rush, beat the crowds. But yeah, I don't know. On that note, I guess I'm going to round this episode. Oh, you know what? Let's make a thumbnail art at the same time. You might be like, how's the rest of the thumbnail art coming along? Made no progress. Actually, when's the last time I made progress? I don't know when I last updated you. I think I've made no progress since the last time I talked about it. I've got it open actually on my other monitor here, but I need to record some Okami. So, would I have time to work on it? Maybe. Probably a little bit. We'll see. Anyway. I don't know. What am I going to title this episode? Like comedy? And then I'll just have like a laughing face as the doodle. There's not enough space here anymore. As I'll just make a thing with uninspired, but I'm just going to go ha 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 ha. Ha ha ha. Just like I'm the Joker. If anything, I suppose it's more just a push to be like, hey, I should really get this thumbnail art done, because clearly I'm being very uninspired when it comes to the flavor text I put on here. But anyway, on that note, I'll round this episode off here. I don't know, Ramesh, he's a pretty funny comedian. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been dear darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see each other again, but for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye bye for now.